Over the last few years, it is inarguable that we've seen a visible decline in quality from big-budget AAA studios. For every Elden Ring, there's 100 Marvel Avengers or Battlefield 2042s. It seems that every other week there's another half-baked, premature release that could have done with a few more months in the oven. Look at Halo Infinite for example, a game that had almost 2 decades worth of hype behind it, which 2 years later has only just about reached a point that die-hard fans are happy with. Crunch culture and strict corporate deadlines have left the standards for a full-price video game so low that fans are happy with a game being decent, let alone playable at release. Studios like EA or Ubisoft seem to think that flashy next-gen graphics are what sells a game, and so will cram as much fidelity into a game as possible, neglecting the gameplay itself. Look at Forspoken for example. This game looks pretty good, but the writing, story, characters and combat were so lacking that the game completely flopped below anyone's expectations.
Did I just do that?
Well, definitely with my assistance.
I did not just do that.
We did.
I just moosh it with my mind.
Perhaps I'll...
Do you not just see me take out that gnarly beast?
The time and effort put into video games seems to increase exponentially by the year. As the market for them grows and grows, the big budget studios can afford to put more and more resources into games. However, this has led to an undeniable trend in the industry. Big games and studios seem to be more and more disconnected from the games and fans that brought them to the success that they have today. I touched on this in my 2-parter about modern Pokemon. There is no real drive to innovate when pumping out annual subpar entries make so much money. The boardrooms of the big studios have realised that brand recognition and advertising will improve profit margins more than investing that money into game development itself. Back in the day, games considered classics now were developed by small teams, often as passion projects. Many developers had to make games as good as possible, as a flop risked financial bankruptcy. Halo Combat Evolved was created by Bungie with a team of only 40 people, which is incredible when compared to the 500-man team who developed Halo Infinite. In the 20 years between the games, the scope and expectations of a AAA video game have increased immeasurably. Video game development has gone from a handful of people working in an office block to a huge endeavour, with budgets reaching into the hundreds of millions. Without any corporate structure or leadership, games as we know them would completely cease to exist. These projects could be completely impossible without the enormous teams working behind them communicating together. However, I believe it is inarguable that the humongous teams behind games may be the issue that has led to the quality drought that people are feeling today. Having hundreds of salaries to pay and quotas to fill has led to the reduction in quality across the industry. It's impossible to coordinate such a big operation with a flawless end product. For a game to be considered modern by a commercial audience, it needs to have a deep open world, pushing photorealistic graphics as well as a long, variety-filled story. Games no longer end when the credits roll. There has to be another 50 to 100 hours worth of content after the game is over to justify the $60-70 price tag. This leads to AAA games feeling very similar year by year. Only certain studios can fund that big of an endeavour, and profit will always be the priority. With profit as the priority, studios are naturally going to lead towards any way to crank out new releases as easy as possible. For example, Ubisoft hasn't changed their formula for decades. No wonder their open world games feel stale. The list of games with the same climb tower, reveal map, do the shit on the map, repeat gameplay gets longer by the minute. Picking up a new Ubisoft game feels like rebuying Far Cry 3 for the 5th fucking time. Furthermore, this profit margin oriented philosophy has crept into the multiplayer side of things too. You can't have a game in 2023 without a battle pass. I like to call this the Fortnite effect. They didn't invent it obviously, Dota 2 has had one for years. But when Epic Games introduced one in Fortnite Season 2, and I'm pretty sure I don't have to remind you how popular it was at the time.
Holy crap! Donald Trump! Hello, Peter. Welcome to Fortnite.
It seemed like every multiplayer game since has integrated one somehow. Halo Infinite, Valorant, Call of Duty, Rocket League, Siege, Overwatch, Fall Guys, the list goes on. It's at the point where it feels weird for a game not to have one. Modern Call of Duty might just be one of the worst offenders. Imagine buying a full price new game only for a good amount of the content to be locked behind a paywall. In my opinion, and I assume this is the consensus, if you pay full price for a game, you should get the full game. The same goes for DLC content that should have been in the game at launch. Is this AAA quality drought all bad? In actuality, no. In the past few years, thanks to tools like Unity and Unreal Engine, as well as platforms like Steam, we've seen the rise of indie games created by small teams break into the mainstream. Games no longer need to sell physical copies, lowering the barrier to entry for aspiring developers. Some of the best games I've ever played have come from small teams, working on games as a passion project on the side of their day job. A couple that come to mind has to be Team Cherry's Hollow Knight or Maddie Makes Games' Celeste, both of which were created by two people, the former of which has sold upwards of 3 million copies across all consoles. Correction. It's definitely sold a lot more than 3 million copies. That 3 million statistic was dated to 2019, which was around 3 years after release. We're now, 7 years after release, so we can assume it's probably up to 10 million by now. So yeah. Alright, I'll let me from a couple weeks ago get back to it then. These indie studios are able to take on the Goliaths that are AAA publishers, because at the end of the day, what matters in a video game is that they're fun to play. Hollow Knight crossbreeds the Metroidvania genre with a 2D platformer, and uses a solid art style and environmental storytelling techniques to build a lore-deep world that rivals some of the biggest recent releases. Celeste tells a much more personal story, touching on themes of anxiety and depression, while maintaining addictively difficult parkour, all with the goal of climbing Celeste Mountain and overcoming the main character's doubts about her ability to do so. Like I said, these two examples are a couple of the best experiences I've ever had with video games, just for the low price of $20 each. You've probably noticed something about these two examples. Neither of them are that conventionally graphically impressive. However, it is impossible to say that either of these games have bad graphics. Thanks to a rigid focus on art style and design, both games have stunningly beautiful areas and backgrounds that often get overlooked in grander projects. Furthermore, Hollow Knight and Celeste both flaunt absolutely stunning soundtracks. Low budgets and less manpower forces independent developers to strip video games to what matters: fun. Who cares if a game looks like a 3DS title if it's fun? Aesthetics are important, yes, but not every game has to look as real as possible. Do you remember back in the noughties when everything had that yellowy piss filter over it? Today's obsession with realism is the modern equivalent. Looking at the multiplayer side of things, a highly anticipated game called BattleBit Remastered released recently, and has found extreme success by breaking games like Battlefield down to their core mechanics. 127 versus 127, massive maps, vehicles, fully destructible buildings and more. The comparison that every gaming YouTuber was making is that it feels like what Battlefield should be. The game, developed by 3 people over the course of 7 years, first became popular after the shocking release of DICE and EA's Battlefield 2042, possibly one of the most overhyped, underdeveloped games in history. With that absolute disappointment lingering on shelves like a bad stench, people turned to alternatives, one of which being BattleBit, which had been around for a while at the time, and looked promising. With a couple limited access playtests under its belt, the public could see that the small indie development team could go far, and that the game had the potential to be the next big thing. BattleBit managed to achieve something that countless games had tried and failed to do. The talented team behind it managed to blend fast-paced Call of Duty-esque PvP, Battlefield maps and destruction physics, and milsim elements that feel straight out of Arma or Squad. Incredibly, the viral hit was only developed by a group of 3 guys: Sergeant Okidoki, lead dev, who seemingly masterminded the project; Larry, the 3D artist who is responsible for the incredibly detailed yet simple gun models; and Velasquez, the level designer, responsible for the game's wide variety of maps, ranging from dense urban environments to beaches and forests. BattleBit sets a very important precedent in the gaming industry. It has proved that well-implemented mechanics and gameplay trump graphics at the end of the day. BattleBit can be run on a potato thanks to its extreme optimization. Said optimization is definitely a factor in the game's success. It sold 1.8 million units within 2 weeks of launch. That's $27 million in gross revenue. Hopefully BattleBit Remastered has been a wake-up call to the higher-ups of the AAA studios. Either delay your ambitious games or prioritise. Another example I'd like to give is the shocking Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary Edition. Released to celebrate 10 years since the release of the first game, and also as 343 Industries' first outing with the franchise, the remaster promised updated graphics in 1080p 60. However, when fans got their hands on the game, they found that 343's and development studio Saber Interactive's reimagining of the game was far from ideal. Textures were just haphazardly plastered on flat walls. Enemies looked distrue to their original versions, having had models, the Elites for example, copied from the previous game Halo Reach, which had a much more subdued art style overall, leading to the Elites looking out of place in the much more colourful Halo CE. Furthermore, the lighting and atmosphere, one of the most applauded parts of Combat Evolved, were completely disregarded, leaving missions like Truth and Reconciliation, a nighttime sniper mission behind Covenant lines, and 343 Guilty Spark, a swamp mission where zombie-like parasite enemies from the Flood are first introduced, being a completely different experience on a first-time playthrough. The fact that the upscaled graphics from 2001 are a better experience is a testament to the power of art style and dedication to gameplay and atmosphere. Whether this game was rushed or if 343 genuinely thought that it was a good product to release is unknown. Seeming as they do allow you to toggle between an original and anniversary graphics, I guess it's not bad after all. And also, let's be real, Halo 2 Anniversary is the best way to play the game, it's so good. To conclude, I think the industry as a whole needs to wake up to the issue of undercooked AAA releases. However, progress is being made. Xbox Game Studios chief Matt Booty, that's his name, was quoted saying that the industry is a bit behind the curve and that games need to be 4, 5 and 6 years in the oven before release. Seeming as he was involved somewhat in the development of Halo Infinite, I hope that mantra will follow the franchise in the future. Hopefully the 9th generation consoles, with that being the Xbox X and PS5, will adopt a new philosophy in the later part of their life. Good game or no game. On a side note, I think that the industry as a whole should take a page out of Shigeru Miyamoto's book, the famed Nintendo developer. He said that a delayed game is eventually good, but a rushed game is bad forever. Maybe that's why Legend of Zelda has been so consistently brilliant over the years. Cheers for watching all the way to the end. Drop a like and a subscription if you want to see content like mine in the future. Going to be uploading way more in the coming month or so to milk that December ad revenue so I can afford to buy out the whole of Steam in the winter sale. Technically business expenses if you think about it. Watch my backlog as well, it's like an hour's worth, time well spent in it.